Has your local authority asked you for information about your home education, or have they asked for a visit, or have they sent you forms? In this video, we're going to talk about how to reply to the local authority in writing using our report writing guide. We don't recommend visits. It's just not the local authority's duty to do the visits. Their forms often miss out questions, or they ask things they're not entitled to. So by replying in your own terms using our report writing guide, it's probably the best way of ensuring they get the information they need and only that information. Our report writing guide on our website, educationalfreedom.org.uk, does seem lengthy and it does seem complicated. However, if you give the whole thing a read through once and maybe watch this video all the way through, you'll find that actually we're giving you lots of helpful advice to only write a few lines of information in all that advice, if that makes sense. So let me get started. This is mostly for England, but it can be used in Wales. Scotland is completely different, so please do refer to our website to ensure you're using the most accurate information. Please don't copy and paste any of the examples. Local authorities have access to this guide, it's public, so they will know if you've basically copied our wording. The rules anytime after now could well change, so do check the website and make sure this is still the accurate, up-to-date information. If you're very new to home education, you may not need to write a report straight away. You could ask using our template letters for time to settle in before providing any information, because you're not going to have much to tell. You never preempt the local authority asking for information, always wait until they do. Reports only need to be brief. The law only requires some very small specific information, and you can easily do that in 1 to 3 pages. It's not a test. It doesn't matter if you write it in sections or bullet points, just lists. It doesn't matter what it looks like. We suggest not handwriting it, just because if it's typed, you've then got a permanent record by email that this is what you've sent, and it's easier to edit as well. If you've missed some information, don't panic. Report writing does not need to be stressful. The local authority will write to you or email you and just say, we didn't get information about this, or can you expand on that? Just be aware they're not always entitled to the information they're asking for. Some will really push their boundaries, but the law is the law, and it doesn't matter what the local authorities say. If you've given the adequate information, that should be all that's needed. If you run into any issues, do give us a shout and we'll help you. So you're providing information to explain how the education is suitable to your child. You don't need to think about what does the local authority want from me. That doesn't matter. This is about your child and how the education is suitable to your child. Throughout the report, you're going to talk about how the education is suitable. So that the law requires suitable to their age, to their ability, to their aptitude, and to any special needs. When it comes to what your child is learning being age appropriate, it can be helpful to know what their peers would be learning. This is just so that you can make sure you address why they may be learning at a different age level. So for example, if your child is struggling to read and is below what their peers would be doing, you can make sure you focus on explaining why they're learning at a different age level. Or if they're learning at an advanced level, the local authority can't come back and say, oh, you're pushing your child too much, if you explain how that is suitable to your child. So whilst we do say you don't need to follow the national curriculum, it can be helpful to be aware of what children that age would be learning, just so you can gauge how you would then describe a suitable education. When it comes to ability, again, you would describe how the education is suitable. So for example, they might be really good at storytelling, so you'd talk about how you encourage that. But then you'd maybe say things that they're struggling with. So if numeracy is really not their strong point, you talk about how you support that and how what they're learning matches what they're able to do. You can say things like, you know, they found it too easy, therefore we've upped the difficulty level, or they've really struggled with it, so we've spent extra time finding other resources to go over these things. Aptitude, so that's about their natural talents for things and how you make sure that the education encourages those aptitudes. So if they're really good at acting, for example, you could say that because they've got this natural talent, that they're at a theatre class at a weekend, or whatever it is. And then of course special needs. You've got to make sure that if the special needs affect the education, that you talk about them in your report. Doesn't have to be detailed, but for example, if your child's dyslexic, you need to address how you support that and how the learning is suitable to their special needs. If they've got a disability that doesn't affect their education, you don't need to talk about it. If they've got an EHCP, at section B, it will state what their needs are. If that is up to date and accurate, you could say, as per their EHCP, their needs are this is what we do to meet them. The local authority is going to have very little comeback if you describe these things. Now, we have a suggested content page, and whilst you don't need to do it in this order, we find that if you write your report following this order, it flows a little bit easier, but it doesn't have to be done like this. So I'm not going to talk through that. I'm just going to jump straight to the next section. So the first section, your educational philosophy. So this is just a couple of lines of information because the law tells local authorities that they have to respect your philosophy. You talk about why home education is right for your child, a little bit about maybe your approach, not your style, but your approach and why home education is right for them. Keep it positive. Don't talk negatively about school. You could maybe even put what you hope your child will achieve from home education, but not future plans, if that makes sense. So that, you know, you could say that you hope home education will give them a wide variety of learning opportunities, something like that. It explains your beliefs around home education. However, the term educational philosophy is sometimes misunderstood, and local authorities will ask you for an educational philosophy. They're not wanting just the philosophy, they're wanting a report, a full detail about the education, but they use the word EdPhil as well, they don't know what they're talking about. So don't ever just provide an educational philosophy. So we've got an example there. Home education ensures Kirk has the time and space to be able to learn independently with support when needed to improve his social abilities and achieve his goals academically. I believe this personalised education will allow Kirk to follow any path he chooses. That's as simple as it needs to be. But like I said, don't copy and paste. If you are deschooling, you've only just started home education, we strongly advise you not to mention deschooling. Unfortunately, this is massively misunderstood within local authorities to mean no education, whereas what it really means is finding your feet, figuring out what works and doesn't work. Well, the example, Suki left school mentally unwell. She was unable to take part in anything that resembled learning without it triggering a panic attack. We've therefore focused on learning through real life, you'd go on to explain. Or when we started home educating Babette, it became clear that they were unable to learn independently or even understand how to seek activities or information for themselves. We have therefore focused on supporting exploration of how they like to learn and allowing them time to find what interests them. During this time, they have learned this and this. So you can take time to deschool, just don't say that that's what you're doing. This section is about your style of home education. Don't just use generic terms. By all means, call it unschooling, child-led, autonomous, fully structured. But you need to explain what that means for you guys, because not everybody that's fully structured has the same style of learning, and not everybody that unschools has the same exact style. So just briefly explain what your style means, but also a little bit about why that is right for your child. Just give a bit of context. Full-time education is not school hours and school terms. So when you look at it, home education is way more than the formal learning. It's the conversations, it's the outings, it's the playing the games, it's the computer, it's baking, it's going to grandma's, it's reading in bed. It's every waking hour. A child, unless they're sat staring at a blank wall, will be learning something, even if it's just thought processes. So most people describe a home education as taking place during all waking hours. The local authority needs a little bit more than that. So if you use some formal learning, you could say when that takes place, whether you follow term times or not. So let's go with term times. So you could say during term times, every morning is spent doing formal learning. Every afternoon is more child-led based or outings. That's as much as you really need to say to describe full-time. Or if you don't follow school holidays, you could say follow a child-led, semi-structured approach. This means Patty is given freedom to choose what she learns and when, but with some expectations to learn some numeracy and literacy most days. Learning takes place all throughout the year, including weekends. And, that adequately describes full-time education. You can't just say the education is full-time. You've got to just give a few more lines of information that adequately explains it. We suggest never giving a timetable. This can often be interpreted as being too structured without the flexibility to do other things. It doesn't allow for explanation of how, if they're learning a numeracy topic and suddenly want to know about the Normans, do you stop them from doing that, or do you allow that flexibility to go and learn what's just popped into their head? So be very careful about describing formal learning, which is perfectly fine if you do have a structure, but just make sure that you explain it to be suitable and how you deal with the flexibilities. An important note, examples, not samples. So a local authority will use the wrong words. They'll say, we need samples, we need evidence, we need proof. All they need is examples. So Bob has learned how to do this. You then don't need to give them screenshots or photos or hard evidence that they learned that. Your word is enough. And we say that never provide samples because they only show a real small snippet of the education. It doesn't give a full overview, a full image of what's happening. So yeah, we say never to go down that route because local authorities then snowball and start demanding more. Okay, section 3, what your child has been learning, how numeracy and literacy and other subjects are covered, including formal and informal learning. Sounds a lot, but basically it's just what they've been learning. And again, don't forget to include how this is suitable to your child's age, ability, aptitude and SEN. So in this section, you can talk about any websites, workbooks, worksheets, hands-on activities, games, discussions, documentaries, whatever the child's using. But you don't need to put everything they've done. You can just give a few examples. Make sure to explain what topics they've covered from each of these resources. So you could say that your child has been learning about castles by visiting one or two, by drawing, by doing research online, by going to the library and getting books. And you could explain how that is suitable to your child because it's expanded their use of words, it's expanded their drawing skills. They spoke to somebody at the castles and stood patiently and listened. You could give that as an example of things that they've done. You could even add that a year ago they were unable to speak to a person at a venue, or it was difficult to see what they were drawing, difficult to understand their shapes, and that they've now refined that. That's the kind of thing you'd need to do, and just give enough examples to show a varied and full education. So you talk about how these resources are used. So do you supervise them? Is it independent? Are you then talking about what they've learned? So you'd include all that kind of information. You'd need roughly 1 paragraph for literacy, 1 for numeracy, and then, you know, a little bit more for any other subjects or topics that have been covered. Try to describe what level this learning is at. And I know that's difficult if you're not doing formal learning. Unschoolers find this quite difficult to explain. However, once you're established, each year you're talking about progress from the previous year, and that's where the local authority focuses on how they're progressing. So make sure you include sciences, history, art. It doesn't have to come under those topic titles. You could just talk about what they've been doing, but make sure you are ensuring that these kind of things are incorporated into their education. It goes on to give you some examples, and I'm not going to read them all, but what I'm going to talk about again is back to the what if we don't do the formal learning, how do we know where they're at? So the example we've got here, in recent months, Luke has been using a science kit to carry out experiments, first watching them on YouTube, then with supervision, he's carried them out. We discuss in detail what the experiment is for and what the results mean. He's been drawing graphs and charts in relation to these experiments, such as building a bicarb of soda-powered rocket and plant chromatography. A good way of describing it is, what did they leave school being able to do? So Maori left school with limited math skills. He was learning at approximately an 8-year-old. So let's say this is a 12-year-old. Therefore, our numeracy has gone back to basics to ensure no basic principles are missed. I noted that he did not understand area and perimeter, so he's been learning from hands-on tasks, blah, blah, blah. Have a read of the examples and hopefully this all starts to make sense to you. Unstructured learning. So not everybody has formal learning, but the majority that do have formal learning still have some level of unstructured learning. You've got to make sure you include these things as well. If your child purely learns from unstructured learning, you would need to make sure that you explain how it's still a full-time education. And that can be difficult, but we've got a few examples and hopefully your child's been learning enough to give lots of examples to demonstrate how it's a full-time education. So we talk about having played Minecraft. Rory asked how you can quickly work out how many blocks to use. So we discussed basic multiplication, blah, blah, blah. So that's how you ensure that the local authority is seeing that numeracy is covered when you don't have formal learning. But because you're not going to be able to say they've completed the year 8 maths book, you need to adequately be able to give enough examples of numeracy to show a full-time education. When it comes to special needs, as I've already said, you can refer to section B of their EHCP. The rest of the EHCP has no bearing on home education. Do not worry about meeting those other sections, that they're irrelevant. For example, Jess is autistic, thrives on routine, so we've ensured the home education has a predictable daily routine. We're encouraging them to explore small changes once a day. That's the kind of thing you could include. And the local authority can't then come back and say, oh, you're too structured, because you've explained why you're structured and why it's suitable. And again, it only needs to be a few lines long. You don't need to go into massive amounts of detail. Then you'd include all the other informal learning that strays a little bit beyond maybe what you'd consider usual topics and subjects. And you've got to make sure, even if you've got the most formal and structured of education, that you talk about the informal learning, the hands-on things, the games. Because otherwise the local authority could look at it and sort of see, well, actually it's too restrictive. So it's a fine balance. And those that have no structure, the local authority can say, oh, you know, where's the formal learning? Where's the actual learning? So it is a hard balance to strike, but hopefully the guide can help you with that. So describe the other educational learning activities. So include baking, DIY, building Lego, gardening, going to brownies, forest school, whatever it is they're doing. If they help Nan do the shopping, you know, those kind of things you can include, and including enough information, working out where you need to expand the information and where you just need to put a few words. So the important bit, which can either be built in throughout, as I've been talking about, or done as a separate. So section 6, how you know the education is suitable. So again, it's about what is right for your child. And if your 14-year-old cannot read or write, but you have supported them in every way possible, and it is still just not possible because of severe dyslexia, but you have done everything you can to support them, then that is a suitable education. For example, you could read to them. They could have audio descriptions on written things, you know. That's the important bit, is how is it suitable to your child? A local authority cannot come back and say it's not suitable if you've given adequate explanation as to why it is. And there's some examples there for you. Section 7, progress. So if you're new to home ed, you're not going to be expected to talk about progress, so don't worry about that. But you do need to explain how you will know if they're progressing. So that could be whether you mark learning together, whether you go over things and they mark themselves, or you have discussions and you point out maybe things where they've made a mistake, or you ask them to explain a concept back to you. There's all sorts of different ways. So if you're further into your home ed, you would then give a bit more information about the progress. So if it's in your first year, you could say, since leaving school, they have now learned how to do area and perimeter, or they've completed year 7 workbooks, or they've built a car engine. So the progress could be a separate section, or you could do it within those previous sections. Make sure you include numeracy and literacy plus other areas. Sometimes social things are important to your child, so you'd include that as well. Again, only needs to be about a paragraph of information. It's important to include section 8, social and physical activities, but a couple of lines of information about that they go to maybe a home ed group, or they go to scouts, or they see their friends every night when their friends finish school, or whatever it is that your child does. But it's also really valid if your child can't socialise, if they can't spend time with other children, you know, build too much anxiety or something like that. You would talk about why spending quiet time with granddad is as much as that child could cope with socially. You'd explain why that is a suitable amount for them, or that, you know, to go to the supermarket, they wear their headphones, but in the last few weeks they've said hello to the cashier. And you'd explain that that is massive progress. There is no wrong and right in any of this if it's right for your child. And that's really, really important. And I know I've said it a lot, but that's the bit you've got to get across, is why it's important for your child. And it's okay not to want lots of friends. And it's okay if their friend is 10 years older, 3 years younger, whatever the thing, or if it's a child that prefers adult company. Just talk about what is right for your child. Okay, so throughout your report, or as an added extra, you talk about your resources. And again, we've got a list of all those different things that you'd want to include. So you'd want to put a few reading book titles of things they've read recently. The details of workbooks if you use them. You can't just say they did a maths workbook. You'd need to say it was year 3 CGP maths workbook, or the complete study guide, or whatever it is. That just helps the local authority, then they can quickly Google it and see what content has been learned. Talk about websites that they maybe use regularly. You don't need to include everything, just give a few examples. Talk about, do you go to the library? Have they got access to a musical instrument or art supplies, and all those other things. But include some specifics. If you're going to workshops, groups, outings, you can include that here or in the social bit. but never say we go to the 10 a.m. town hall home education group on every Wednesday. Don't give that level of detail, because I promise you, in the bad local authorities, they will turn up. You could just say they go to swimming lessons once a week, or they go to the home education library meetup. You know, just detailed enough that they know what you're on about, but not so much that they're going to turn up. It's the same as if you're using tutors or regular friends or anything like that. Don't use names. It's just not the local authority's business. And there's a little disclaimer you can include. We've got a whole section now about what not to include, and I'm not going to fully go through every single one. Just be very careful to give it a read, and remember, write your report, go through this and remove anything that isn't necessary. Getting advice from too many places can be confusing. Our guide has a really good track record. Don't talk negatively about school. You can say they left school unable to do this, but don't slag school off. The local authority aren't going to fix your problems, as horrible as that sounds. They don't care. They just want to know about your child's education. Don't give specifics about people. You don't need to refer to SATs, they're just not relevant, or the EYFS. You don't need to use words like timetable, plan, lessons, teaching. Never mention deschooling. Never use the term homeschooling, because that's an entirely different thing to home education, and it will cause you problems with the local authority. So only ever use home education. The local authority don't give a damn about what your qualifications are or what your experience is. That has no impact on your child's suitable education. In fact, sometimes if you're a teacher, for example, the local authority can use that against you if you're not teaching a full-time curriculum-based education. And some will use that against you if you are. It's just not information they need. It doesn't give you any benefit. Don't talk about future plans. It's just not their business. Don't talk about any worries or give your personal information. They're not there to help you. It just isn't their job. 99% of local authorities offer no support whatsoever, and the few that claim they do use it against you at a later date. So they are not the people to be asking for help. Home educators are the people to ask. Never give samples of work. Keep communication in writing. There's a little bit about the local authority duty on this next page, which is some of the things I told you right at the beginning. And then there is a joke sample report. That's an awful lot of information to have just given you, but I really hope that has helped you understand what our guide is saying. Don't overthink it. Don't stress about it. It's not worth weeks of worry. Don't preempt them asking for a report. They might never do it. Just wait till they make their enquiries. You're in charge, not them. You choose how you respond. Our advice is to use our report writing guide. And yeah, hopefully that helps. But me, my team, we're all here to help you. We don't offer a report check-in service. We don't think this is a good use of anybody's time, and it doesn't offer any guarantees. There are no guarantees with local authorities, as even within one local authority, they will treat different families differently. But the law is the law. So provide your report, trust yourself. If they've got any questions, that point we will happily step in. We'll tell you whether you missed something from your report and need to provide it, or if the local authority are overstepping and need to go away. And we'll help you tell them that. That's what we're here for. We're more than happy to help you. But trust yourself. Don't stress. Just get the report written and gone if they've asked for one. Hope that helps.